Sewage in rivers and on beaches, worries about the cost of water and profits made by firms. And now the country's biggest water company, supplying fully a quarter of the population, Thames Water, is on the brink of collapse. Well, no better Labour frontbencher to talk to us this evening than the Shadow Environment Secretary. This is Jim McMahon. Lots of concern over the future of Thames Water. How worried should we be?
Well, I think it is a worry. You know, the largest water company in Britain, it's got debts of £14 billion that are built up. It's got millions of people who rely on it for its clean water, for dealing with the sewage. And, you know, rightly, people are concerned about what that means, in particular, if it requires a government-led bailout that's then ultimately added to the bill payers. And so we've been holding the government to account. We brought today an urgent question to Parliament. The Secretary of State didn't even bother to turn up to answer the question. And so, you know, for me, it does raise kind of real concerns about whether the government have got a grip on this or whether they've been taken by complete surprise because they haven't organised well enough.
So what needs to happen then? What should happen?
Well, the question for the government really is this the canary in the coal mine? Is this really speaking to a wider vulnerability in our water industry where £72 billion has been taken out in shareholder dividends? We haven't seen money invested to reduce leaks and sewage discharges.
But what should happen, though? That's the question. What, right now, Thames Water, lots of people would be very worried. If you were in government, what would you do? Well,
at this point, the regulator has the power to have a court order to essentially take control of the water company to make sure that it continue to trade and service its customers. And we understand those talks are taking place today. If we were in government, well, you would expect me to say we wouldn't be here in the first place because we are not surprised by this. You know, we've had the warnings of financial vulnerability from Ofwat themselves, who have said all but two of the water companies in England and Wales are above the debt levels that they're comfortable with, that they agreed to in the last price review. And it just strikes me that we haven't got the right balance here. We've allowed those shareholder dividends to go out on one hand, £72 billion. We've allowed debt now to reach levels of £60 billion that we're all paying for through our bills. And now we're requiring forward investment to deal with the water shortages where leaks are losing water, and also sewage discharges where our rivers, lakes and seas are being completely disrespected with raw human sewage.
Well, you've spelt out the problem, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that Labour would bring the water companies back under government control? Would you nationalise them?
Well, we said as a point of principle, so this is for the industry overall, taking to one side the issue immediately with Thames, which is, as a point of principle, why should working people pay twice? They've already paid through their bills for water companies.
Would Labour nationalise the water companies?
We believe that the water companies that have taken £72 billion of shareholder dividends should be made to fix a system that's broken.
Would Labour nationalise the water companies?
Well, the answer is no, because the water companies have to put right the system that they've taken £72 billion.
I'll be honest, I think there'll be an awful lot of people listening to you thinking, I agree with you. These dividends are ridiculous. Look at this, £1.4 billion in dividends to the water companies last year. That's outrageous. Sewage in the rivers and the seas, that is outrageous as well. And, of course, now these financial vulnerabilities as well. Why won't you nationalise them?
Well, at this point, why should bill payers, because that's who would pay the bill of nationalisation, why should bill payers pay water company shareholders who have already taken over £70 billion out of the system? Why should they pay them for an artificially inflated share value today to bring that into public ownership? The other
better
side
service,
of it,
better water and cheap in the long term, I guess.
But I think that's about regulation in the end. And we can require, instead of losing that £1.8 to £2 billion every single year in dividend payments as an average, we can direct water companies to use that to fix a sewage scandal, to fix the leaks where we're having water shortages. That's got to be the first port of call before we go to nationalisation. Now, clearly, we have to deal with all eventualities. And if we have a system, a water industry that has market failure, we're not seeing that on a systemic level yet, but we are concerned about Thames, then of course you need to look at that environment at that point in time. But that's not where we are today.
What about the regulator? Ofwat, has that failed?
But it's pretty clear that the regulator has very big questions to answer. But in the end, the regulator will only ever be as strong as the government gives it direction to be strong and gives it the powers to be strong. And I observe, frankly, a Secretary of State and a Conservative government that haven't given it the importance that's needed, haven't given it the strength of ambition that's needed, and haven't given them the powers that's needed to put this right. So absolutely they can do more, but it requires leadership from the Conservative government to really give them the direction.
Now, the Times have just published a story in the last hour or so to say that Keir Starmer is planning to reshuffle his top team in the next month or so. I just want to read a quote to you from the piece. The quote is, Jim McMahon is likely to be demoted from Shadow Environment Secretary, with Labour determined to do more about water cleanliness. Doesn't sound great for you?
Well, I mean, listen, first of all, that's speculation. and I'm very proud of the work that I've done in the Environment Brief. You know, the way that we have really brought now to the public's attention what's really been going on
You're pitching
in
to
our
keep your job
water
here,
industry.
hoping that Keir Starmer might be listening.
I'm pretty confident that I've done a good job on water, that I've done a good job on access to nature, that we've done a good job on food security. Now, clearly, I'm not going to speculate about a future reshuffle, but I can say in terms of my record in the post that I'm very proud of what I've done. And I would just say this, how many people had it in their consciousness that raw human sewage was being dumped in their rivers, their lakes and their seas? Of course, because of the campaigners, but also because of the weight that Labour has given from the front bench, and I've led from the front on that in a way that I'm very proud of, because I believe in the end it comes down to what does it mean to live a decent, fulfilled life as a working person, and having quality of life is really important to that. So, speculation to one side, I'm very proud of what I do in this job.
I mean, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, but it sounds a little bit like you're almost acknowledging that you are likely to lose your job and you're just trying to pitch for on your record.
Well, I'm not, for a start, and I'm not going to get into the speculation and the motivations behind it. But listen, the Environment Brief is a coveted brief, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if more people were looking at it and saying, with the profile that we've raised, in terms of food security, in terms of the water industry, in terms of nature and all that has to offer, of course I would expect other people
So your rivals are coming from you, maybe? Maybe they're who briefed at the time, do you think?
But I'm very proud of the work that I've done, and I do think that is seen by others.
OK. Are you a cricket fan?
Not particularly, no.
What did you make of the...
I think I just batted that one away, hopefully.
Very good. What did you make of the Just Stop Oil protesters interrupting the Ashes?
Well, I mean, I think as a general rule, if we want everyday people to believe that the climate crisis is something that they have to make a contribution to, individually and collectively, we've got to bring people with us. And I think any measures that really set the general public against the argument isn't helpful. So I can understand why they feel the need to do it, because it gets attention and we're talking about it today. But I definitely don't believe that's the way to win the hearts and minds of the general public.
OK, thank you very much.
Thank you.